But these issues definitely are near and dear to my heart. And also, I think the most misunderstood because people have so little access to understanding these stories.
Yeah. How old were you when your dad died?
7.
Oh, wow. I always think about, in one of my books, I had a whole section on what all this work on what happens to people when they lose a parent at a young age. And it's this incredible study that was done in England of an extraordinarily high percentage of high achieving people lost a parent in youth. And
Wow.
The argument is that it has one of two effects. It's like Nietzsche, it's the Nietzschean thing. It either crushes you or it makes you stronger. You've gone through just about the most horrendous thing that can happen to a child. And if you can emerge from the other side of that, you're kind of toughened in some way. I'm just fascinated by how drawn you are to investigating this kind of darkness and finding some value in it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's
or some understanding.
Well said. It's well said.
Understanding.
I think it's interesting to look back on this and how. First of all, it was the definitive event in my life. Was my father dying? It had a huge influence on everything after, particularly in my youth. I think. It was funny in watching Anatomy of a Fall this last year. What I thought was so interesting and illuminating to me was how condescending everyone is to the child about their understanding of what's going on. And that really rang true to me, where I think that a lot of people, even at our age, don't necessarily know how bad can be. Like, they just don't know. They haven't been close to it, to the worst possible thing that could ever happen to you happening. And when it happens to you as a child, you're obsessed with your parents at 7 years old. You are in love with them. And my father was like such a heroic figure, like taking off on his motorcycle every day and then flying off in his F4. It's like he was like a superhero in my life. So to have that happen and then tell me you'll never see him again, like it was such exquisite revealing of how bad the world can be. And now when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, people are saying to you like, oh, every cloud has a silver lining, all these things, and you're like, I want to die. Like, you're done. You're suicidal, really. Your interest in this place is over. And I only now realize that looking back, I'm like, oh, all of these words and how I was probably being viewed as a 7-year-old is, she'll forget him, she'll get over him, and you're like, dude, I don't want to be here where that can happen at any moment. I don't trust any of this now. And so I think that it's a very interesting thing that you do have to kind of toughen yourself and learn how to exist in that world where that can, and I still really struggle with it. I really struggle with it as it relates to my child, where
struggle
I'm like,
what's it?
With the knowing how bad can be.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Like knowing that we all feel like it's not going to be us and it can't really happen, but it really could, and it could happen at any moment and there's nothing you can do about it, Interestingly, I don't think I would be the director I am if my father hadn't died. And then I think Monster I made literally directly about the death of my father. It was about like, oh, okay, cool. Everything works out. Everything happens. Like the voiceover in that movie is saying everything, it's all these myths that she's heard throughout her youth. If you just love and believe in yourself, anything can happen. Nope, not for Eileen Warnes, So that it was a direct a chance for me to express how dark the world can be that people might not realize. And I think the driven part, what's interesting, I'd have to think about what I think it is that makes you driven. For me, I was passionate to take control of the narrative. And my original reason for wanting to be a filmmaker was that I thought that the stories were always going to be terrible in real life. So I was like, I want to tell my story. I want to be the one who controls the story. So at least I can live a good outcome there, and I turned out to be pleasantly wrong that, I've lived a wonderful, knock on wood, life in so many ways. But yeah, I think it was like, it made me very, very driven.
Mm-hmm. By the way, what you just said is incredibly, it's I mean, it's really I mean, it's incredibly kind of moving, and honest
Thank
about
you.
why you do what you do. What's interesting is that what is for most of us, you know, when I was growing up as a kid, I thought all the time about what it would mean if I lost one of my parents. But it was an abstract thought. For you, it's real.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. So I can't, as a kid, when I thought about that, it wasn't something I could put into words. It wasn't something I could make real to anyone else. It was just it's the kind of weird kind of fantasy you have, dark fantasy you have at 3 a.m. You're like, oh my God, what would happen if? But you by virtue of going through it, you knew what it felt like.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, because after my father died, then my sister had the most beautiful friend, runaway boy who came and lived with us. And I was like so in love with him. He was like 3 years older than us, Paul Penzini. He was like beautiful and, he'd run away and was living in our house. And then he had to go visit a cousin and he got shot in the head and killed. And so I was between those two things, I was like, this place sucks. It made me very romantic though. Like you interestingly, that kind of tragedy, I think, particularly for the opposite sex parent and then the opposite sex older brother figure, it made me so romantic about everything, but about like love and longing and loss.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like I take for granted my familiarity with the darkness, but of course the romance of the stories I want to tell are very much born from that. And so I think I sort of thought I was this much darker, rebellious, the type of person that makes Monster in my youth. And now I realize I'm not that person. I'm also the person that makes Wonder Woman. I'm all kinds of, I've grown up. I'm not just that person. But so I think that makes me look back and say, yeah, why do I have that much darkness? Oh, that's interesting. Let's look back. You really don't, you just go forward for a long, long time before you say like, how do I explain to people that I made Monster and I made Wonder Woman,